Our text today is Luke 23, verses 32 through 43. And in it we read the words that describe the death of Jesus. Two others who were criminals were led away to be put to death with him. And when they came to the place that is called the Skull, there they crucified him and the criminals, one on his right and one on his left. And Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." And they cast lots to divide his garments. And the people stood by, watching. But the rulers scoffed at him, saying, "He saved others, let him save himself, if he is the Christ of God, his chosen one." The soldiers also mocked him, coming up and offering him sour wine and saying, "If you are the King of the Jews, save yourself." There was also an inscription over him, "This is the King of the Jews." One of the criminals who were hanged railed at him, saying, "Are you not the Christ? Save yourself and us." But the other rebuked him, saying, "Do you not fear God, since you are under the same sentence of condemnation? And we indeed justly, for we are receiving the due reward for our deeds. But this man has done nothing wrong." And he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." And he said to him, "Truly, I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise." The scene in Luke 23 is one of chaos and horror. The air is filled with the sound of hammer on metal and the cries of agony amidst strained breathing. 3 men hang on crosses. In the center is Jesus, beaten, bleeding, and fighting for every breath. Mockery, rejection, and unbelief fill the atmosphere. The religious leaders sneer and scoff at Jesus. The soldiers mock him. Even the criminals who are being crucified on either side of Jesus join in. "Are you not the Christ? Save yourself and us." If you were there, seeing him on the cross, Jesus would not look like someone to put your hope in. There's nothing about that moment that would look like victory, nothing that looked like power. Jesus would be someone you would want to turn away from rather than towards. And yet, in the middle of this chaos and horror and mockery, one man begins to see what no one else is able to, and not with his eyes, but with the eyes of faith. Something has shifted in one of the men hanging on the cross beside Jesus. You can hear it in his voice. Moments ago, well, as we read in other Gospels, he was part of the noise. He had been joining in, mocking Jesus like everyone else. But now, there is no defiance left in him. He is a broken man in body and in spirit. And he calls out to the other criminal on the far side of the hill, "Do you not fear God?" And we might say this is where his journey of faith begins, not with a statement of confidence and not with strength, but with fear. His journey of faith begins with fear. He readily acknowledges his guilt. He says, "We are receiving the due reward of our deeds." He knows why he is there on the cross. It is no mystery to him. He is a rightfully convicted criminal. Rome has judged him. Rome has condemned him. And Rome is now executing him. And he makes no argument against this. He's offering no excuses. He is not shifting blame. He's not making any last claims of innocence. He openly confesses to the other criminal on the other side of Jesus, this is what we deserve. This is justice. But then he goes deeper, because this wasn't just about Rome, it was also about God. He says, don't you fear God. This criminal knows that he will soon stand before a holy God, and he is terrified at the thought of it. Everything he has been, everything he has done, is about to meet the justice of God. And he knows what that means. The full weight of the wrath of God will be set against him for eternity. And the suffering that will soon come will be far worse than anything that he is enduring on the cross. Imagine him being on the cross, nailed to wood, and saying, for me, this is as good as it is ever going to get. It's only going to be worse from here. And he is not ready for it. He is not ready for it. But there is no more time for him. There is no opportunity to try to make things right. No chance now to undo the wrongs that he has done. There is no way to fix his life. And so this condemned man hangs there, helpless, exposed, and afraid. And we see this is where the story is about to shift. Not because in that moment of weakness he finds some inner strength within himself, but when he realizes he has none. He is not good enough. He is not strong enough. And in that moment he knows what he needs. Not a second chance to fix his life. He needs a Savior. He needs a Savior. And that recognition is really the front door of salvation. Recognizing the need for a Savior. It's true for every person of faith. We must also come to this moment of honesty and humility where we stop comparing, we stop explaining, we stop defending who we are and what we've done. And we simply stand before the Lord as we are, and we acknowledge our guilt that we too are criminals. We are spiritual criminals, and there's nothing that we can do about it to take away who we are and what we've done. And in that moment, just to acknowledge and confess our need for a Savior to rescue us from the justice of God. After speaking to the criminal on the far side of the hill, he sets his eyes upon Jesus. But he keeps speaking to the man on the far side. He says, but this man, Jesus, but this man has done nothing wrong. Now, somehow this man sees it. We don't know how. But he sees in Jesus there is no guilt. There is no corruption. There is no sin. And while other religious leaders are mocking him as a fraud, he recognizes Jesus as righteous. And while the Romans are crucifying him as a guilty convict, he declares Jesus to be innocent. And then, for the first time, he turns to Jesus and speaks to him directly. And his words are remarkable. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. There is far more in these words than we might first realize. To begin with, don't miss how completely outrageous it is when he says, when you come into your kingdom. Because there's nothing about this moment that would make Jesus look like a king. There is no crown, there is no throne, there is no army, there is no victory, just a man beaten, bleeding, and dying. And yet, this man, this criminal, looks at Jesus hanging on the cross next to him and says, "You are a king." If you noticed in our text, we read that just above Jesus' head there was a sign, a placard that read, "This is the King of the Jews." It was meant as mockery, a joke, a warning, a statement of defeat, a flexing of the Roman Empire. But this man sees something different. What others meant as ridicule, he receives as truth. He sees a king where everyone else saw a failure. And more than that, more than a king, he sees a kingdom. A kingdom that does not belong to this world. A kingdom that is not confined by the limits of death. He sees a place of glory and majesty where Jesus will reign beyond the cross. How can this be? The disciples, they had seen miracles and they were struggling to understand. They had seen Jesus' power. They had seen his authority. They had seen his works. And yet when it came to the cross, they were shaken to the core. But this man, he saw none of those things. He didn't see any miracles. He didn't see Jesus' power. He didn't see visible glory. All he sees is suffering and weakness and death. And yet he believes. This is what faith is. It sees what others miss. Not because the circumstances make sense, but because faith recognizes who Jesus truly is. And that's exactly what this man is doing. He's looking upon a crucified man and he sees a king ruling over an eternal kingdom. And I want to stop here because I think this exposes something in us. Because we often think, if I could just see more, I would believe more. Or if God made it clearer, my faith would be stronger. But this man saw less than almost anyone and understood more than most. So think about it this way. It's not about how much you see, but what you see. That's faith. Not about how much you see, but what you see. And this is a good place for us to ask, what do you see? When you've prayed, you've really prayed, and nothing changes. When you're trying to follow Christ and things don't get easier, they get harder. Or when you walk through a season of life you didn't choose and God feels silent. When life feels more like a cross than a kingdom. In those moments, what do you see with the eyes of faith? What do you see? In those moments when Jesus does not look like a king, will you still trust him as one? For that is the question of faith. Well, there's more in this man's words than just the acknowledgement that Jesus is a king, as astounding as that is. But in his words, there's also the glimmer of hope that this king will somehow, some way show him mercy. He says, Jesus, remember me. How surprising is his request. He could have asked for a rescue from the cross, or he could have asked for a second chance. But he didn't ask for either of those things. He only asks to be remembered. Now, in the Bible, to be remembered is never just to be thought about. It is to be acted upon. When God remembered Noah, he didn't just simply think of him. He brought him safely through the flood. When God remembered Rachel, he opened her womb and gave her children. When the psalmists cry out, remember me, O Lord, they're asking for God to act, to show mercy, to save, to do something, to intervene in their life. So when this man says, Jesus, remember me, he's not asking Jesus to just recall his name. It is a plea for mercy. He's asking, act for me, save me, bring me into your kingdom. And if we just take a step back, how bold and brazen is this request? He has nothing to bring to Jesus. He comes empty-handed with absolutely nothing to offer in exchange. And yet, he asks in hope that this request might be met with favor. Jesus, remember me. And is this not faith, to ask for mercy with nothing to offer? Just to ask to be loved and to be acted with grace and kindness? Jesus responds to the criminal's request with this reply. Truly, I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise. Have more surprising or gracious words ever been spoken? Everything this man had feared has just been overturned. He was expecting to meet the justice of God and the wrath of God. He was expecting punishment, but instead is given paradise. Paradise, where beauty defies human language and its wonders exceed comparison, where darkness gives way to light and death gives way to life. Paradise, where every wound is healed and every burden is lifted, and where the chaotic noise of this world fades and peace settles in its place. Paradise, where the weary find rest and the longing heart is satisfied. Paradise. And I think there might be a temptation for us to dwell on paradise and speculate about all the wonders and visions that heaven might afford. But with that, let's not overlook the second part of what Jesus says. It's actually the first part, but we're looking at it the second part. Jesus says, you will be with me. Jesus does more than remember this condemned man. He receives him. He brings him to himself. See, this man isn't just being sent somewhere to paradise. He's being brought to someone. He's not just gifted a place, but also a person. Jesus says that this man and him will be in paradise together. Together. As I said, ever been more surprising or gracious words ever spoken. But upon what assurance can such a promise be made? How can something so astounding be true that this criminal would finish his day in paradise with Jesus? Well, Jesus could make this promise because at that very moment, he was securing that man's place in paradise. For even as Jesus is speaking these words, he is bearing sin. He is taking on the judgment. He is enduring the wrath of God in the place of sinners, so that sinners like this criminal could be brought to God, so they could be brought into paradise, so that they could be with him forever. And here lies the great irony that an unbelieving world will forever fail to see. That the cross did not end the reign of Jesus. It revealed his reign. Now, for those who have turned to Jesus in faith, if you have done that at some point in your life, I want you to hear these words of assurance and to really internalize them. The King who died to save you will not forget you, will not lose you, but will bring you with him into his kingdom forever. So take heart in any and every circumstance. Jesus is still King, even though it may not look like it at the moment. And no matter what, you will always be his, and you will be remembered. You will be remembered, and paradise is yours. And if you are watching today and you have not yet come to Jesus, the invitation to do so still stands. And you don't have to wait until you have your life together or when you have something to offer him. For the criminal teaches us those are not prerequisites to come to Jesus. The invitation stands to come to him, and I encourage you to do it now. To turn to him, even if you are at your worst, to call on him, to trust him, and know that you will find the same mercy today that condemned man found 2,000 years ago. For when he said to Jesus, "Remember me," Jesus did not delay. Jesus did not hesitate, nor did he qualify his promise. Today you'll be with me in paradise. When I think about that moment when Jesus uttered those words, I can't help but think about what little strength was remaining in his broken body. And yet he used it all, he spent it all to speak grace. And may you hear and receive those words of grace today.